Morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I just want to bring you guys another video on the ideas of vertebrates and invertebrates, and just as a recap of what we've been talking about, and just to take a look at our learning objectives again, real quick. Um, we want to be able to define the key terms vertebrate and invertebrate, just to tell me basically what they are, defining those words. You want to be able to classify living things as either a vertebrate or an invertebrate. So be able to tell me whether this blade of grass is an invertebrate or a vertebrate, um, or if this dog is an invertebrate or a vertebrate. And then lastly, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on, is comparing and contrasting vertebrates and invertebrates. Um, but just as a recap real quick, we're taking a look, and we're still going to be within this kingdom of Animalia, just so you're clear on where we are. So still talking about animals, but instead of talking about this phylum of Chordata, we're going to be talking about invertebrates, so they won't have that chordate, that backbone in them. So two kinds of animals, like I said, and just as again another recap. Last week we talked about vertebrates, so amphibians, fish, birds, reptiles, mammals. Remember we had this picture of this frog, and we see this backbone here running down the length either side of this frog. That whole thing there is its backbone, making it a vertebrate. And because it's an amphibian, we know that. So this other side, we have invertebrates. There's this whole long list of them. There's a lot of different kinds of invertebrates. Most of the animals on this planet are invertebrates. Um, they make up the majority of animals. Um, and so I have this picture over here, and your job over the course of this video is to tell me, what is this a picture of? Just take a real quick guess. If you want to pause the video, tell me, what is this a picture of here? It's an x-ray of a specific kind of animal. If you want to pause it, I'll give you the answer later on, so give that a think. Um, but yeah, and we'll come back to that, and I'll give you the answer in a little while here. And this also falls into one, if you want to take the challenge a little further, you can give me the animal, but which of these classifications of invertebrates do you think that this would be a part of? All right, so just kind of talking about the specific kinds of invertebrates, one we have is sponges. We have our friend SpongeBob here. He's a sponge that we know. But so sponges are defined as animals that have these bodies made of loosely joined cells, and they're very old. Sponges have existed for a very long time, almost 600 million years. The animal themselves, like this sponge here, hasn't necessarily lived that long, but the species of sponges have been around for almost 600 million years. Very old species. Um, so very old systems, and they've just been around for a long time. Nidaria, another form of invertebrate, that can be defined with these thin sac-like bodies. So you see our example over here of the jellyfish. You see they kind of have this like sac on the top of their head there, um, and they usually have some kind of tentacles. We see, remember from Finding Nemo, he lived in a sea anemone, sea anemone, and this would be an example of a Nidaria as well. They have some kind of sac-like feature at the bottom here, but then all these tentacles that rise up off the top here. So those are examples of a Nidaria and a couple ways to define them. Next we have echinoderms. Okay, we see our friend Patrick here, and he has 5 parts to him, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that's actually one way you can tell he's an echinoderm, because he has this 5-point symmetry, right? He's split into 5 parts, okay? Um, and that's one way to define an echinoderm. If we look at real life versions, kind of creepy starfish over here, and a normal looking starfish over here, it has this 5-point symmetry or radial symmetry coming from the center of its body here. We can, oops, sorry, still getting used to my, we have this from the center point, from its center point here, 5 different points going out from its body, and that's one defining factor of an echinoderm. And like I said, an example of that is a starfish. And another way is a lot of these species have a spiny covering. You can kind of see I'm drawing out, I'm accentuating these spines here, and that's one way we know it's an echinoderm. Next, we have annelids. And a really common example of an annelid is an earthworm we see here. And the defining factors of an annelid, they usually have round worm bodies. So there's another form of invertebrate called a flatworm. Handwriting's horrible. But we're not going to talk about them. But just so you don't get them confused with annelids, you might hear of this thing called a flatworm. And the one way we know that annelids are different from them is they have these round worm bodies instead of flat. They're kind of round like this, right? So this is an annelid right here. This is not. They also have segmented bodies. And you can kind of see it here. This is a leech down here. You see these lines running up and down it. But you can definitely see it. Oh, here's a good spot here at the bottom of this tail of this worm here. You can kind of see there's lines running up and down. And that means it's a segmented body. The body's broken up into different parts. If you were actually to take a worm and cut it in half, it would still survive because it has multiple organs running through its bodies. Repeating organs, actually. It has a couple hearts, a couple stomachs, all these things to keep it alive, even if it gets cut in half. And like I said, examples of these are leeches, like in this bottom picture here, or earthworms, like we have over here. So those are annelids. Next, we have mollusks, something you've probably seen. You can see them out in your garden even. So you might see snails or slugs. But a defining factor of a mollusk is it has this single fleshy pad or a muscular foot they move with. So on the bottom of this slug here, it kind of crawls along, and that's where the word mollusk comes from, is kind of this old term for muscular foot. So they pull themselves along, and that's kind of how we know that, at least land versions of mollusks, that's how we can kind of define them. And they also sometimes can have a shell. A lot of them have shells, so we see them here on this snail. And actually on the inside of squids up here, it looks soft on the outside, but actually on the inside, they have these hard, bony shells, and that's kind of a good defining factor of a mollusk. A lot of what I'm going to say, guys, these different kinds of these different factors, I'm going to star them, like the shell and the muscular foot. They don't necessarily have to apply to every single mollusk. Not every single mollusk is going to have a shell, and the muscular foot is a pretty big factor, but like these squids, they're still mollusks, but they don't necessarily have a foot, so kind of take everything I say with a grain of salt. But a lot of these mollusks are going to have these two things, okay? Or some kind of version of a muscular foot, okay? All right, moving on. So arthropods. Arthropods are going to be the most popular version and most numerous version of invertebrates. And they're so numerous that they get split up into 4 different categories. We have arachnids. Ugh. These are going to be the gross ones. Centipedes, even grosser, and millipedes. Crustaceans, which aren't too bad. And then insects, crawly bugs. But out of all of these 4 different kinds, they all are going to have lots of legs and segmented bodies. Segmented meaning split up into different parts. So you have maybe 3 different parts of the body of an arthropod. It will get split up into 3. 1, 2, 3. Don't worry about that there. Or maybe it'll have a 4th part. But that's one defining factor of an arthropod, is it's going to have lots of legs and segmented bodies. And I have this question mark over here because I'm going to bring back this X-ray of a invertebrate, and now we know it's an arthropod, right? It's an arthropod because it's on the arthropod slide. But which one of these four do you guys think it is? Give you a second. It's not an arachnid. It's not a centipede or millipede. Probably could have guessed that without, because you probably know what those look like. And it's not an insect. So it's actually a crustacean. And it's actually just, and it's probably pretty easy to see, it's actually just an x-ray of a crab, right? Can you see that now? You have the main body of it here. You have its legs shooting out, right? And then its pincers at the front. So it's actually a crab. And it's actually, in, like I have down here, crustacean. All right, moving on. Arthropods. So we have arachnids, right? Arachnids, you've probably heard of that. Arachnophobia is the fear of arachnids or fear of spiders. Spiders. Gross, right? Nobody really likes spiders, but they're actually very good for our environment. They eat a lot of bugs and everything and keep the mosquitoes and everything away. So two defining factors of arachnids. They have 4 pairs of legs, so meaning if they have 4 sets of 2 legs, they have 8 legs. So that's where that idea of arachnids having 8 legs comes from. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 legs. So defining factor of an arachnid is having those 4 sets of 2 legs, or 4 pairs of legs, pairs meaning 2. And then those bodies are divided into 2 sections. And I kind of picked this picture here because 1, it's kind of the less gross version of it, but 2, you can kind of really see where this, you can kind of really see the 2 sections. So you see this big bulbous sac on the back here, that's 1 section, and 2, the smaller portion where maybe the mouth and the eyes are in the front. So 1, 2 sections there, right? You guys see that? So that's an arachnid. 2, the next portion of arthropods. So remember, so we were talking about invertebrates, right? Invertebrates. I'm not going to put the whole word invertebrates. And then within invertebrates, we kind of go down to And within invertebrates, we kind of go into arthropods. And then from arthropods, now we're splitting up into those 4 sections. And then this one, we're talking about centipedes and millipedes, just to kind of keep you guys on track. So centipedes and millipedes, you kind of probably have seen at least 1 or 2 of them around. They have these long segmented bodies. Remember, segmented, you can kind of see where each portion breaks up into a new segment. Kind of outline them here with my pen. So that's one defining factor, long, thin bodies. And then they have these pairs of legs on either side, just lots of legs, lots of segments to their bodies. And that's how you can really tell a centipede and a millipede. I won't spend too long on them because they're pretty easy to define. And now we have crustaceans. So like I said before, we have our crustacean friend from before we've talking about. They have 5 to 7 pairs of legs. So we have 1 pair at the top here, another pair here, 1, 2. Ironically enough, this x-ray is actually, he's missing a leg. It's kind of funny. So something happened there. But 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs. And then actually, like it says over here, first pair is often used as pincers. So this front pair here is his pincers. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pairs of legs, bringing it to a total of 10 legs here. You can have up to 7 legs in some. I think some lobsters have some, which is an example we have here. This is a lobster here. This is a scorpion. And most of the time, crustaceans, their bodies are covered in shell. So this scorpion here is a hard exterior shell. We all know that lobsters have shells and crabs have their shells. So that's how you know a crustacean. And last but not least, we have insects. And I won't go, again, we all kind of know what an insect looks like, but some defining factors is they have 3 pairs of legs. So it's kind of hard to see here, but it's really easy to see on the mantis, even though he uses front ones as pincers, kind of. That's 1 pair, 2 pairs. He has, and then his back legs here, his 3 pairs. So bringing it to a total of 6 legs. So that's how we know he's an insect. Body's divided into 3 sections. If you kind of look at this bug here, I think it's a lightning bug actually, one section here where his wings are. This is actually a middle section here where his heart would probably be, and then his head up at the top here. So 1, 2, 3 sections. So that's the 3 sections requirement. And then they often have wings. So you can tell it's an insect because a lot of maybe our arachnids don't have wings, or the crustaceans definitely wouldn't have wings. But we know that insects, for the most part, we know that praying mantises actually have wings back here in this section here. This is a grasshopper. He definitely has wings back here. And then underneath this shell here on this, I believe it's a lightning bug, there would be a set of wings. So that's how we know it's an insect. Fairly straightforward, guys. So I want to move on to the learning check at the very end of our video here. So 2 jobs for you guys after watching this video. The first one being, number 1, sorry, keep hitting that button. Number 1 being, what is one thing that the 6 major groups of invertebrates all have in common? That should be fairly easy because we need to know what invertebrate means, and when you know what invertebrate means, you should be able to answer this question. What is one thing that they all have in common? All 6. So our sponges, Nidaria, echinoderms, annelids, mollusks, and arthropods, what is one thing they all have in common? Once you've answered that question, what I want you to do, and I'll give you guys more information on this number 2 here, this number 2 point. Pick one invertebrate that lives in Ireland. So any invertebrate that lives in Ireland, I guarantee you there's a bunch of them because we know we have insects here, right? I can look out my window. There's a fly flying around this room. They are invertebrates, right? Because they're insects. Pick one that lives in Ireland. It can be any of these, any of the 6 that we've talked about. And put together a fact sheet on that. And I will send what I'm looking for in that fact sheet in an email, okay? Great. So I think that's it. Yeah. So thanks for listening, guys. And I will catch up with you guys soon, hopefully. See you later.